Hello, Shalom. Hi, y'all. This is a little different thing this week, and we're combining Foundations for Life along with the Israel Update. And the esteemed Mike Clayton is out of pocket today, away in travel mode. And yeah, okay, that's enough. So it's up to myself, Barry Phillips, along with Hanoch Young from Modi'in, Israel. And we are delighted to have an opportunity to sit down and talk with you, especially Hanoch, in light of some very interesting recent developments in Israel.
Sure enough.
Right out of the block, I had a question. I've been working on this question for 2 or 3 days.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, man. So here in America, we tend to see things through American eyes. We see world events, but we interpret them through American eyes and our own worldview.
Right.
Politically, we are, for the most part, divided between the brands of Republicans and Democrats, but the ideology that most people actually cling to is either progressive liberalism or conservatism.
Right.
So when we read news events about Naftali Bennett being elected and the favored star child of the evangelical American right, Netanyahu is no longer in power. Immediately, and I heard this on Political Talk Radio a couple of days ago, it's branded as, well, conservatism or the right wing is taking a hit, and now it's a bunch of these wild-eyed liberal progressives that are in charge. Here's my question.
Yes.
An Israeli understanding, what is the difference between right wing and left wing? Here in America, it can be either finances, governmental size, or moral values.
Okay.
In Israeli politics, it's not necessarily those elements that we're looking at. What does right wing, left wing mean to Israel?
Absolutely nothing. Let me explain.
Okay.
And this is why, first of all, it's used here all the time. And Netanyahu, who is the master of, kind of the spin doctor,
Right,
labeled everyone that doesn't agree with him remaining in power as a leftist. Now, again, without going into details and specifics of names of people of all of his governments, because remember, he had been, thank God it's over, prime minister for 15 years, the last 12 consecutively. Various coalitions, various people, and he has always labeled himself as right wing. He is not. He is a centrist. Okay? When he had the opportunity to declare sovereignty in part of Judea and Samaria and an American government that...
Let's pause right there just a second. When you say Judea and Samaria,
yes,
many of our viewers would not understand, not having a geographical map in mind. We're talking about the West Bank as it is politically referred to. Is that correct?
Well, that's how it's referred to by Americans and Europeans.
Yes.
When y'all come to Israel on the Connect to Israel tour, and I will show you that that's actually our eastern hills. It's the eastern bank of the Jordan River. We don't refer to it as occupied names, but that's okay. Y'all can think of it as the West Bank, quote unquote. Essentially, where 98% of the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, was lived.
Yes.
Judea and Samaria. Okay. So, Netanyahu is not a right-wing guy. He is running around screaming that he's got to bring down this dangerous government. Netanyahu is a demagogue and a megalomaniac. Now, understand, this is coming from me, who is extremely right-wing, whose major teaching influence in life was Rav Meir Kahana. Okay? So y'all have to look up Rabbi Meir Kahana, Meirkahane, and you'll get a sense of where I'm coming from. Netanyahu, I'll give you an example, a more clear example. Netanyahu is almost always partnered with the Haredi political parties, the ultra-Orthodox.
Okay.
They are not right-wing. They have always supported territorial compromise, and their only concern is funding for their communities and interests. It's not like in America when you meet a religious person and they tend to be, although not always, but they tend to be, quote unquote, right wing. They tend to be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Not the case here. So the terminology is wrong. Naftali Bennett is extremely right wing. He is an incredibly bright man, a great leader. He was a commander in our most elite commando unit, went into high tech, has made a fortune, gave it up for the political life, and is leading a coalition in our government that is combined with Israelis across the spectrum. It's a chance for unity, a chance to heal some of the divisions in our country. Now, I know it's a little scary coming from me. It sounds like there's a kinder, gentler Hanoch, or at least one that's finally taking his medications on a regular basis. But you need to understand more of what's going on in Israeli society to know how important this is. And just to touch upon right wing, left wing, chicken wing, buffalo wings, whatever kind of wings you want to talk about. Yesterday, Hamas, the terrorists in Gaza, sent over their arson balloons. Immediately, Prime Minister Bennett ordered our Air Force to bomb them. Netanyahu typically just let it happen and ignored it. So those people that are losing their minds, are there left-wingers in the coalition? Now, again, remember, parliamentary democracy, a coalition-based parliamentary democracy, is about as different a form of democracy as you can get from the American model. It's totally different. Your cabinet ministers, your cabinet, okay, they're not ministers, whatever they're called, the guys in the cabinet, the men and the women in the cabinet, in the American government are picked. They're not people from the Senate, and they're not from the House of Representatives. Our cabinet ministers, the ones that are helping Bennett run the government, are from our Knesset. They're one of the 120 people that were elected. Very, very different form of government. And again, I encourage people to contact me. I'll be happy to give you a call and walk you through some of the stuff. Very, very, very different than what you have in America. But I do, I've been reading these things from people who know absolutely nothing about our government. But they've got a Bibi fetish. They've got a fetish about Netanyahu. If it's not Netanyahu, then they can't imagine how we can function. When I bring up issues to them of what is it that you liked about Netanyahu, all I get is this general, well, we like the way he spoke. Well, that's just wonderful. That's kind of like the Bill Clinton approach to leadership.
Indeed, yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, of course, there was, the intern thing, but, but he's Bill Clinton. He's cute, like unbelievable. Just it amazes me. You know something, Barry? For 3 years, we haven't had a national budget. International credit agencies are cramping down on our credit line as a nation because we have no national budget. Netanyahu excelled as a foreign minister. He excelled at the public relations things. He excelled at going to Congress and schmoozing around. Enough. You know, this, as the saying goes, nothing changes if nothing changes.
So he's a slick politician.
He's beyond slick. And, you know, when I get to America next, which will probably be Be'ezrat Hashem, with Hashem's help at the end of November or December, around Hanukkah time, I'll be happy to, you know, explain to people as I travel around what exactly he did and didn't do. And he played us Israelis one against the other. 9 million Israeli citizens, and we've got probably 57 million opinions of how things should go in our country. But we can all agree on what hasn't worked. And if nothing, you know, you got to try something different. I have voted for Naftali Bennett I've been in Israel enough for 5 elections. You know, I've been in Israel for almost 12 years.
Wow.
Netanyahu, the prime minister, since the day I landed. It's time for a change.
Well, yeah, you know, if any American president, after FDR was in 4 terms, is like, you know, this is enough. It's enough. So,
yeah,
the major concern that I have heard people comment on here, well, he's got Arabs in his coalition,
right?
And the Lapid party, is that right pronunciation? Correct?
Well, Yair Lapid's party is called Yesh Atid, which means there is a future. Yair Lapid.
That they're leftists. Well, you know, there's a lot of people with R's by their name in our government that are not conservatives. They're barely moderates. And whenever the leftists want to do something other, they knuckle under with barely a whimper. So, you know, we have nothing to complain about around here.
No, and, you know, the thing is, I appreciate people trying to have an insight. But when their background of Israeli politics could fit inside a thimble, I chafe a little bit. Okay? And I'll tell you why. It was Netanyahu who pursued the Ra'am party, these Arabs. And they are Israeli Arabs. And, you know, first of all, I need to touch upon something. In 1948, if Israel had completed the exchange of populations, you know, 1.5 million Jews were expelled from Arab countries. If Israel had relocated the Arabs living in Israel, you know, the proverbial thorns in our eyes, we'd be in a different situation. But we didn't. And we have to live with the reality that they're citizens. If they're citizens, they're going to vote. But let me assure you of something, which I don't know, for some reason seems to, you know, in the 6,000 plus miles between me and our friends in America, people seem to not realize this. The Arab parties, there's only one of in the government. And again, Netanyahu was the one courting them. He came up with the idea. They are concerned with their own communities and their needs, just like the Haredi, just like the ultra-Orthodox. The ultra-Orthodox did not have an influence in the foreign policy or defense strategies of our country. They only were concerned with their community. The same thing with this 4-person Arab party. That's number one. But
okay, the Arab party has got 4 people in it.
4 seats.
Okay. All right. Well, that.
Okay. Yair Lapid is a centrist. And, you know, this idea, this need that people have to label bothers me for a reason that might surprise you. It makes me seem the mature, sophisticated adult in the conversation because they're being incredibly foolish. They're talking, you know, we had an expression in the Bronx when I was growing up, talk what you know. They have no idea. They're reading an article or they're passing on some information, and they're forgetting the significance of the state of Israel. The state of Israel is the single greatest guarantee that we have that Hashem and his presence are alive in our world today, and his prophetic promises are all destined to come true. Now, when I heard that from my teacher, Rav Meir Kahana, back when I was a kid, it was nice. When I heard it from a pastor, a Baptist pastor in Millbrook, Alabama, 8 years ago, it hit me. It hit me how real that was. Naftali Bennett is Dati Leumi. He's national religious. He is the first and only religious prime minister we've ever had.
What do you mean by religious? That is, he's observant to
Kippah Sruga, a knitted kippah. That's right. He prays with tefillin every weekday morning. He only eats kosher. He observes Shabbat. Yeah, Shabbat as we do it. Yeah.
So when other prime ministers showed up with a kippah on their head, or they went to the wall, that was show?
No. It was done out of respect. Even when Donald Trump went to the Kotel, the Western Wall, he put on a kippah. Everyone does. Everyone covers their head. It's a show of respect. In the same way that when you all go into a church, went into a church, you uncovered your head. That's what was done there. So don't be at all fooled by these pictures at the Kotel. We have never had a religiously observant prime minister. Menachem Begin, of blessed memory, was traditional and respectful, but not at all shomer mitzvot, not at all observing mitzvot. No.
Okay. Well, I ran across an article yesterday. I sent that to you from. I've never seen it. Israeli 365 News. I've never been to their site before, but there was videos of this sinkhole in Jerusalem. And the writers started to make after the facts of who got hurt, if any, and all that, they began to make the correlation between Korach being the Torah portion for this past weekend, the earth opening up and swallowing people, and they surmised this must be Hashem's divine sign to us that Bennett is Korach and he is displaced Netanyahu. In their minds, Netanyahu had to be Moshe. When I read that, I went, do what?
Okay.
So what's going on with the sinkhole?
Okay. First of all, Israel 365 sells Israeli products. They do a nice job. They also have something called Breaking Israel News. I have said repeatedly on air, on record, that they're our version of the National Enquirer, that it is not a real news source.
Okay.
That they write stuff. Mike and I were laughing about this a few years ago when they wrote that the Dead Sea was coming alive. And I could go into the geological things. It's not in the Dead Sea. It's areas nearby because the Dead Sea was withdrawing. It was shrinking. But anyway, here's the deal. What do we read in the Torah? Korach started a rebellion against Moshe. The earth opened up and swallowed him and his followers. A lot of people. Clearly, cause and effect, divine punishment. I think we can all agree upon that interpretation.
Okay.
A sinkhole in a parking lot in Jerusalem opened up. 3 or 4 cars fell in. Show me how that correlates. And I got to tell you, we no longer have at this time, y'all may have noticed, the Davidic monarchy. We don't have kings. Netanyahu likes to refer to himself in private as His Excellency. It reminds me of Colombian coffee, El Excelente, you know? Now, the guy is a megalomaniac. So the thing is, who's the audience for Breaking Israel News? American Christians and Hebrew roots folks who are focused on the Bible, who are well-meaning in their hearts, but so easily misled. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, I don't like to attack people on Facebook. I'd rather do it in person.
Yeah, okay.
No, but again, here I'm wearing the Punisher shirt. You know, it should be very clear where my head's
here
at.
in November, folks. So hold on, get your helmet on.
Yeah. I think we can, Barry. I think we'll be able to count on one hand the congregations that will invite me, but that's okay. It's all good. It's all good. I'll get to spend more time with the people I care about the most. And that, of course, I'm referring to your wife, Laura. No offense. No, and I love it. No offense. We're all Southerners here, Barry. No
yes,
offense.
we are.
Okay. So there was a woman who, and I love when people do, put up a post and they do a colored background so it really catches your eye. And it was weep for Israel. Not pray for the new government, not pray for divine direction and strength for our Rosh Memshalah, our prime minister. Weep for Israel. And I basically performed a written
lobotomy.
I was thinking of another part of the body, but yeah, we can leave it at that. Basically, I mean, like, how dare you? Again, the land belongs to all of us who are truly part of Israel. But right now, sadly, I'm the only one out of us that has the opportunity to be a citizen. And it falls upon me to stand and to defend the honor of the state of Israel when people who have the IQ of a moron go ahead and say things with no basis. Well, I think that Israel will lack security without Netanyahu. I mean, seriously.
Let me break in right there. I was reading this morning on Depka File.
Right.
Israeli intelligence-based reporting. And it was noting that the Bennett government immediately responded to the arson balloons.
That's right.
And then that the flag parade was not canceled, but they just rerouted it away from Muslim Quarter and went ahead and had this big event in Israel. But then it lists those that were participating in assessing the situation. Many people will recognize the name Benny Gantz, but it references the IDF chief, the Shin Bet chief, the IDF intelligence directorate head, intelligence analysis chief, etc. Those persons, are they the same ones that were advising Netanyahu? So there's the military minds have not switched all around just because there's a change of
okay. That's the thing that's amazing. Benny Gantz is our Minister of Defense. Benny Gantz was the Minister of Defense under Netanyahu. He is a former chief of staff. Okay. The head of the Shabak, the Shin Bet, our internal intelligence service, was asked to extend his term. So it's not like in America where, it's funny. Trump was out, and I hope our listeners are not shocked, because I got a question the other day. What is it that you think what is it that you think of or did think of President Trump? But they put, what do you think of President Trump? Now, I didn't have the heart to break it to this person that he's not your president anymore. I know that there are some people, like, he's not my president, he is my president. Well, good for you. But he's not in Washington anymore. He's in Florida. Okay. But that, oh, by the way, let me just say something. And this is a word to our American friends. It's very easy for me, who does not live in America. I do not have skin in the game in America. I love America. I love Americans. I have family, and all of my friends are in America. But living in another country, being a citizen of another country, I have a very skewed view of the leadership of the United States of America. I view it strictly how it affects me as an Israeli. That's all. I mean, believe me, I feel bad. I know what the lumber prices are. I know what's going on with the meat shortage. I know about the gas prices, and it hurts me. But understand something. I don't have, again, the skin in the game. So it's very easy to sit in America and criticize the government of Israel, which 10 out of 9 of my friends know little to nothing about.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit.
Bless their hearts.
Recently, United to Restore had come to a conclusion. You and Ken Rain started this a number of years ago.
2013.
And it was beneficial, effective, impacting for a period of time. And it seems from the Facebook post that you both participated in, it had run its course in a manner of speaking. Ken is dropped back, but you were reiterating, I'm pushing forward.
Correct.
So
what does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, what does that mean, number one? But number two, in the vacuum of United to Restore, what is it that is another effective step? We see Hanoch's going to be hitting the turbo and continuing forward. But for our side of the family, we just can't sit back and say, well, it's gone. Alas, now what do we do? We need to know what our next steps are. What would you suggest?
Okay.
Some considerations on our side of the family, and of course, highlight what you're engaging in.
United to Restore was never an organization. It was a concept whose main presence was online via Facebook and via a website. Our plan, our hope of doing conferences and things like that, for a variety of reasons, never happened. I would love to see people get more involved directly with Bina, B'nai Yosef North America.
Amen.
I think, pardon me?
Amen.
I think Bina is the vehicle, and United to Restore, again, was a concept pushing what my thing, which I call the Revolution for Restoration, this idea of mutual respect for the reconciliation and restoration of all of Israel. They were never mutually exclusive. I have always encouraged people to join Bina, be involved, get your congregations. It would be great if the elders of Bina and the administrative, family of Bina were inundated with people saying, how can I volunteer? What can I do? That's the first thing. The second thing is, after Ken's post, I put up a post, which was the last post on United to Restore, and I listed just briefly a number of the things that I'm involved with, because some people started messaging me saying, so are you pulling away from this? And the answer is no, not at all. And I've struggled for years with trying to figure out what my role in all of this was. And it was actually clarified in part the last time I was at your home, Barry. when I was telling you how I've wrestled for years with what exactly my role was supposed to be, and you told me, I'm going to paraphrase you, so forgive me if I'm getting some of the words wrong, but you saw my mission very much in line with Matthew 15:24 of trying to help gather the lost sheep of the house of Israel. My brothers and sisters, descendants of the northern kingdom.
Yes.
Ephraim. Now, that working with the sheep, if you will, quote unquote, that time for me has come and gone. I'm no longer looking for the sheep, although I'll always be there to encourage them and support them and cheer them on and be the loving brother. But instead of the sheep, I'm now looking for the lions. I want the lions standing with me. I don't want to tear my follically challenged head. You'll notice people are starting to wonder if my hairstyle is mirroring that of Naftali Bennett, our prime minister. He's considerably younger than I am, but I've got a lot more hair going. But no, in all seriousness, because this is huge, and this is an insight that only fully came to me last night. I'll be honest with you. During our recent war, I was astounded and deeply hurt at how many people in this movement were silent. And I realized that the time for sheep, and sheep to me are like wildebeests. Again, I don't know a lot about agriculture and farm animals. Poor John Conrad is probably sitting, right now saying, I really need to have a talk with that boy. And Mike, when he's watching this, will say, I really should have made him go out and mow my lawn because he doesn't know what he's talking about. But it's time to stand up and be fearless. I don't like talking to people about the need to connect to Israel. And I'm not just referring to the tour that Mike and I lead, but the concept of that connection to Israel, Hashem's chosen land, and have them look at me blankly and say, well, when the Lord provides a way, that's when I'll go. When I get the word from the Lord, well, maybe the Lord has said it. Come on now. But you're just put your fingers in your ears saying, I can't hear you. So I'm going to be a lot more aggressive. I'm going to be a lot more in your face, but not in an antagonistic way. But I'm looking for those people who want to take it to the next level.
As you're describing that, Hanoch, it's been a popular thing among the evangelicals and Hebraic roots folks to have I stand with Israel bumper sticker on their automobile, or to wear a Mogen David on occasion, or some kind of identifying something to say, I appreciate, stand with, support Israel, my brother Yehuda, etc. Now the anti-Semitic spirit has risen in America. Yesterday, there was a march in New York City, from what I understand, Palestinians chanting about freeing the occupation. Other locations, other major cities have had similar events.
Right.
The lions are going to have to stand up and roar. You can't stand in the shadows while this kind of thing builds momentum.
Right.
As Barney Fife on Andy Griffith's show said famously, nip it in the bud. So there has to be a vocal outcry as well as whatever other means that the Father will provide to us of dealing with this. Because if we sit back and say nothing, do nothing, then it will be taken as approval. If you don't
Right.
stand against someone, they will count you as an ally.
Right.
So, to our American audience, on your social media sites, in your local arenas of influence, there needs to be a outcry. We don't hate the people, those that are carrying the so-called Palestinian flag and chanting. I don't hate them, but their ideology is violence. They're seeking to uproot and displace our covenant brother and part of our family, and then we have to stand against that. You can stand against someone, you can be vehement in your resistance against what they're trying to accomplish without actually hating them. Just don't push me. And I appreciate, most people may not be aware of the benefit that Israel provides to the very antagonist and terrorists that are trying to annihilate them.
Yeah, we still, like idiots, provide all the electricity to Gaza. Now, 680 of the 4,500 rockets that they fired at us fell short and landed in the Gaza Strip. There's Gaza City and there's the Gaza.
Give me those numbers again.
More than 4,500 rockets were fired at Israel, and 680 landed in territory that they control. Okay?
On their own people.
So a number of people were killed, buildings were destroyed, etc., etc. But I'm sorry, I just distracted myself with there was a point I was trying to make. I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry about that.
We were talking about the electricity being supplied.
Okay, yes, thank you. So it destroyed 1/3 of the towers that conveyed power. 1/3. Fully 1/3 of Gaza was without electricity because of their own rockets. So, of course, they wanted our repairmen to go and fix it. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. And, Europe and America, but primarily the European Union, have rebuilt Gaza repeatedly. You would, you probably wonder why it is that these people give money to terrorists. Because you have to understand the world isn't neutral when it comes to Jews. When Jews are physically attacked throughout the world, including the United States of America, repeatedly, it's very dangerous being an openly identified Jew. Now, notice something. When these gangs go around and attack Jews in America, they don't ask them, where do you stand on Israel? They see them as Jews. This is called anti-Semitism.
Yes.
This is Jew hatred. And when evangelical Christians are silent about it, that's bad enough. When people who were so-called, quote-unquote, part of Israel from the so-called Hebrew roots movement, quote-unquote, messianic, and they're silent, in the Torah it says, Lo tamod al dam re'echa. Don't stand idly by your brother's blood.
Mm.
That's the Torah. That's not a rabbinic commentary. People can't say, well, we don't believe in it. Great. People have rationalizations for everything. And what's interesting is Israel, as of next month, is finally beginning to open up to tourism. That's after 16 months of our border being shuttered. Now, like the rest of the Western world, like the EU, like every major country, except for the United States, at this time, it still will require the testing and the vaccination at this time. And again, remember, we just have a brand new government who's now actually going to take a look at it, because we have a prime minister who isn't focused on staying out of jail for his crimes, as we did previously. Yeah, he's guilty. Netanyahu, you bet. So I'm hopeful that that will change. But my point is, I'm wondering how many of our dearest friends, Barry, are ready to go to Israel the moment things fully open up for them. The moment Israel says, no, you don't need a vaccine anymore. Are they willing and ready to buy a ticket? I got to tell you, I'm the ultimate optimist, but I don't think so. I don't think so. Because I saw way before this COVID thing how people came or didn't come. But that's okay.
I think that there is, on my side of the picture, a yearning, a longing. It's been frustrating that we couldn't come. It's been frustrating we couldn't even get out of our own house at times.
Yeah.
So there may be a switch.
Well, it's interesting. We'll see. Now in Israel, as of yesterday, just as of yesterday, masks are not required indoors. We stopped using them outdoors 2 months ago. Israel has made tremendous strides. Now, of course, us poor tour guides are still among the 10% of the population, hundreds of thousands of Israelis that are still out of work.
Right.
Now, again, it's been a tremendous improvement. Our unemployment went from 4% right before COVID to 28%, and now it's down to 10%. As long as you're not part of that 10%, you're doing well. but the rest of us are, like people say, wow, it's amazing you've lost 55 pounds since you were last in America. When you don't have the money for food choices, life becomes really simple. But there are a lot of tourism-related industries, like hotels, like restaurants, like taxis, like bus drivers, like tour operators, not just us tour guides. So, we're making strides. Again, we have a new government, and we have people that are actually, looking at things. We have a health industry healthcare system that needs to be rebuilt and repaired. We've got an educational system that's the joke of the Western world. Israel's really been neglected, particularly in the last 12 years. Gee, what was going on? Oh, yeah, that was the Netanyahu administrations. But I know you all love Bibi. People love Bibi, yeah, because you had Obama as a president. So what can I tell you?
Yeah. So as we close today, Hanoch, if one
Yes.
would want to contact you and perhaps support Hanoch Young and the interim of his situation, how would you prefer to be contacted?
You could go to my website, kolyehuda.com, KOLYEHUDA.com. There's one of those magical donate buttons. I don't know if you guys have them on American websites, but it's also a way to contact me. I love hearing from people. I miss you.
We miss you, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall. So please let us know your arrangements.
I certainly will. With pleasure, Barry.
Look
Thank
forward
you
to
so
that.
much. Great seeing you. And
Thanks for the
well, thank-
explanations. And remember, folks, right wing, left wing, when you hear that and the American news media and so forth, not necessarily rightly
no,
correlates with what our understanding is.
not at all. Not at all.
Clarification is much needed. Thank you, Hanoch.
Sure. And have people get involved with B'nai Yosef North America now. Don't wait till
Yeah.
tomorrow.
You can find B'nai Yosef at BneiYosefNA.com, BneiYosefNA.com. We appreciate you going there.
Sure.
Next week. Shalom, brother.
Take care, Barry. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.